career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on his path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. It's Tuesday, and that means we are live again from Boca Raton, Florida. This is a program, we're in our third year, of helping caregivers, family caregivers, unpaid family caregivers that are caring for people that can't care for themselves. It could be they have some form of dementia like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, a lot of other dementias. There's so many of them. But whatever it is, you are a hero. And I say that very honestly and truly because caregivers is a name that we kind of throw out there, but we don't really know what it entails unless you are a caregiver, or like me, you work with caregivers. Caregivers is a very difficult job. It's not just a 24-hour day job. It's a 36-hour day job, just like the book that we give away every week on the show, which you'll have an opportunity to call and get that in a little bit. So caregiving is something that pretty much you're thrust into without much preparation or knowledge or experience. And so this show was actually birthed to help family caregivers to understand what's next, what could be coming down the pike, to learn from experts in the field. And there are so many experts in the field that can help a caregiver, like doctors, nurses, geriatric care managers, social workers, caregivers themselves, families of caregivers. We've had everybody on the show, and we continue to bring you fresh, current information every week to help. So if you're tuning in South Florida on the radio, great. Or if you're on caregiversolutions.info, which is the internet that you can watch live, that's great too. Because with that, anybody can watch anywhere. And speaking of anywhere, I was recently in San Antonio, Texas. I was visiting one of our Arden Courts. And yes, we do have Arden Courts in Texas. We have one in Richardson, one in San Antonio, and one in Austin. And I was at the San Antonio Arden Courts. And by the way, I'd like to give a shout out to the awesome team and all the staff at the San Antonio Arden Courts. I got to spend a week there with them, and they're wonderful. Their staff, their management, they're so dedicated and so caring. And matter of fact, we have about 50 Arden Courts throughout the United States. We have 10 right here in Florida, where I'm at right now, and the rest are sprinkled across the Midwest and the Northeast. So when I was there, I met a wonderful lady who partners with Arden Courts, and she's one of these experts, one of the people that you might need on your team at some point if you're a caregiver. And she is going to come via phone. She couldn't come from Texas to Florida, but she's going to call in, and she's going to talk to us about what she does, how she does it, and how she helps families of caregivers. And so I'm very delighted to have her with us today. We're going to learn a lot from her and take some notes, because I think you'll find her very, very interesting. So her name is Jill Piazzi. She's a care manager. Her company is called Gray Matters, and she's in San Antonio, Texas. And I think she's on the phone now. So let's check. Jill, are you there?
Yes. Hello.
Hi. I see you on the screen. We have a split screen with your picture on one side, calling in live, and I'm on the other, and I can look at you while we talk. So thank you for calling and being on the show today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. We met for a little while last week in San Antonio, and we were chatting, and I thought that you had a lot of interesting things to share. And so I wanted to have you come and be on the show today to share those things with everyone, because I think that what you have to say about what you do is very good for people to hear. So just to let everyone know, Jill has a Master of Arts in Gerontology, and she is a CMC, which is a Care Manager Certified. So let's just start right off the bat, Jill, with telling everyone what exactly is a care manager.
Okay. Well, we call it in our industry aging life care management now. We used to call ourselves geriatric care managers, but our national association, the Aging Life Care Association, did a rebranding a few years ago, and they found that not all of us just work with geriatrics. Some of us work with younger persons with disabilities and middle-aged persons, so they were smart to change that. But we do a lot of different things, but really the big goal is to help with personalized decision support and solutions, typically for the long term. So we do a lot of different things, and I can talk about all the different services we provide. We're kind of the hub and the wheel for families or professional caregivers. We're kind of the go-to persons that can be a resource.
Great. So I know here in Florida we have a lot of geriatric care managers for our population. What is it like in San Antonio area?
Well, not too many of us here. I think that'll change as our boomers are aging, right? We have 10,000 people a day turning 65 in the U.S., so I think with the boomers getting older, as they're getting into their 70s and 80s, I think we'll see a change in this industry. We'll probably have more people coming in and wanting to serve, especially those that have worked in the fields of social work or gerontology or nursing. That's kind of the typical backgrounds of care managers. So I think we'll see a shift at some point.
Yeah,
we're a little bit slower here in San Antonio to do things than other markets, but I know in Texas, some of our other areas like Dallas and Houston, there's a greater number of aging life care managers than San Antonio.
So what made you want to become a care manager?
Well, I think really what it was I did social work back in the start of my career 27 years ago, and so I've always kind of done care management. maybe on the short term, because when you do rehab, people don't stay with you a long time, so you're trying to solve the problems and work on the discharge and getting equipment in the home and getting home health set up. So you're doing care management duties. But as I went along in my career, I guess I was kind of getting frustrated and wanted to work for myself, so I started researching companies actually in California. This was back in the late 90s. I was doing some research, and at about the year 2000 is when I started Gray Matters, but I was in Austin, Texas, and just really wanted to hone my skills and work with the senior population at that time, which I'd done for so many years, and wanted to be on my own.
Well, good for you. I know you're very well respected there in the San Antonio market, but I have a question because a lot of people haven't really heard of a geriatric care manager before. And I think, like you say, as the population is growing and we're getting the baby boomers and they're declining, I think that you're right about there's going to be a bigger need for it, and therefore people are going to know about it more. What would be some of the qualifications or characteristics that would be necessary in order for someone to be a successful care manager?
Okay, that's a good question. I think typically, like I said a little while ago, most people going into the industry have a background typically in healthcare. So most of us are pretty adept at the healthcare industry, different facets of aging, also care communities and things like that. So ideally you have some background, and most of us have degrees in nursing, social work, or gerontology, I'd say is the majority of the disciplines. Sometimes you'll see physical therapists or other disciplines coming in. I think one of the big characteristics for you as a person needs to be that you truly care, because you get involved in your clients' day-to-day needs. And if you're with someone for years, like I've been, and a lot of my colleagues have been, they become family, and their families become part of your family. So you do have to truly put them at the utmost importance, the forefront of your mind. You need to be focused on, just what is going on with them at all times and their family members, and also be a good problem solver. You need to be able to get in there and jump in head first, because sometimes things are not always real easy. Many times our calls are crisis-driven, and it's not always simple situations. It could be difficult situations, like the persons that have dementia living at home and they're not managing their meds, they're not eating well, they're unsafe, they're still driving. We get involved in some pretty heavy cases, and so you do have to be compassionate, good problem solver, good listener, and very detail-oriented. We get a lot of details, so I'm always taking a lot of notes when I'm with my clients and my family, especially on the phone before I meet them. I'm taking a lot of notes. So,
well, I think you have the right idea. All of that is true. I've worked with many care managers in my 18 years with Arden Court's memory care community, and I have found that the most successful ones do have a heart for what they do, and they are passionate, and they care so much about their client and putting the client's needs first. And I think that is exactly right, and that's why I asked you to be on the show, because you do possess all of that. So thank you for that. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, Jill's going to be sharing a lot more about care management, what a person would need, why a person would need a care manager, and how they go about getting a care manager, and lots more. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2828 2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Often occurs with Alzheimer's or related dementias, even among their caregivers. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother.
Care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We are back, and my guest today is Jill Piazzi. She's joining us via telephone from San Antonio, Texas, where I met Jill last week while I was visiting the Arden Courts in San Antonio. Jill is a care manager. Her company is called Gray Matters, which I want to ask her about that name in a second. And she is very well qualified to speak on the subject of care management. She has a Master of Arts in Gerontology, and she is CMC, which is Care Manager Certified. So thank you, Jill. We touched on a little bit of this question, but I want to get more in detail about it, about why would a family necessarily need to hire a care manager?
Well, there's various reasons. Sometimes people are calling in a crisis situation. So, like the example I gave a little earlier, the person that's at home and unsafe, possibly experiencing dementia, not taking medications properly, forgetting to take meds, forgetting to eat, still driving maybe, just unsafe situations. And so a family may call a care manager in because they're at a loss. They don't know what to do. Maybe the parent has told them to leave them alone. I mean, the parent has told the adult child to, get out of their business, or they won't allow providers, like professional caregivers, to come in because some people, if there's dementia, they feel like everything's still normal and that everything's the same. They don't realize that there's some deficiencies. So that could be very stressful for family members, especially what we find as care managers is we may have a family that doesn't even live in the same town as their parent or aunt or uncle, and they're responsible for them. They may be the power of attorney, or they just care. They're worried about them. So we might get called if the family doesn't live in the same area, or even if they live there, we get families that are very busy. The adult child may still be working and may have children still at home, or may have other family members to tend to. Like I've had clients where the adult child has in-laws plus their parent to take care of. So they're really pulled between different persons to be responsible for them. So we get called in all kinds of situations, especially I see, too, when people are coming out of a hospital setting and they're confused about, wow, which rehab do I go to? And should I just go home with home health, or should my family member go to a skilled nursing facility and utilize that more intense therapy? And they might want advice on where to go, and then also what to do once they get home. Are they going to be able to be alone again, or do they need providers? If there's dementia again, are they safe to be at home after something massive like a stroke or a hip fracture? Maybe they don't have good safety awareness. So it's making sure everything's lined up in the home once they return, or making sure that rehab is the right setting, and that everybody's communicating about the goals for that person, and being involved in the care plan process, which happens in skilled nursing. You have the team meeting with all the disciplines, and so a care manager could be a part of that too.
There's a lot of balls that you're juggling, it sounds like. A lot of things going on at the same time, a lot of questions from families. And, you know, families, like you say, they are busy. And not only that, but they just don't know the right thing to do because they've never had to do it before. And having a care manager there who has the experience, I think the best thing that you can do for a family is, like you say, give them guidance, but also give them options. So do you dictate what happens, or do you lay it all out and give the family options and then work on it together? How does that work?
Yeah, typically it's a team approach because, you know, I don't always know the family and the senior or the client as well as the family does. I'm just meeting them. We're jumping in and trying to solve the problem. So it's giving them different options. And there's so many factors you got to look at. Let's say if you're doing a rehab or placement, you're saying, okay, is this location work for everybody? Are you going to be able to get here after work? Is it convenient? You're looking at cost. You know, if they have to go into maybe a respite situation and pay out of pocket, is that realistic? Or is it better to come home with family supplementing the care? So you're kind of looking at all the different angles and seeing what's best for that client and what works for the family. So it is a team approach. You know, the care manager doesn't dictate anything. We're just trying to come up with solutions that will work.
And do you work with the person's family's doctor, their primary care physician, to help organize all of this?
Yeah, on occasion we might either go to the appointment. So I have clients where they don't recall what the doctor's saying. They don't remember what medications they're on. They're not taking notes. So I'm the one going in as the advocate, asking the questions, getting information to take back to the family or to the specialist, and, you know, keeping notes so I can report back to the power of attorney.
That's very important.
We interface with the physicians quite often.
Yes, yes, very important, because especially in early stages of mild cognitive impairment or early dementia, a person may not recall everything that the doctor said, or they might not hear well and miss something, and they may not remember instructions or follow-up. And it's very important for caregivers to be there, and if they can't be there, they need to have somebody who can be there to be the advocate just for those reasons. Because how many times have we talked to our parents and, oh, you had a doctor's visit today. Well, what did the doctor say? Well, everything's fine. You know, everything's fine. Well, it might be that everything's fine, but it also might be that there are some issues and mom doesn't remember what they were, or she may not even want to share with her family, which can cause problems down the road, obviously, with follow-up and things she needs to do. So I think having someone there in the office to take those notes and ask those questions, those important questions of the doctor, is really invaluable.
Right. And what we sometimes do, if there's a problem situation like the unsafe senior, is we might call ahead and talk to the nurse, because as we all know, the nurses do a lot of the background work. They're feeding the physician a lot of information. So many times as care managers, we might call ahead and say, hey, you know, I'm bringing Miss Jones in today. These are some of the concerns that her family has, not taking the meds. So we're giving them some narrative so that this doctor can be prepared and knows what the concerns are before we walk in. Because as we all know, we don't get an hour visit with our doctors typically, at least in San Antonio. I don't know about Boca Raton, but here
it's the same way in
it's
Florida.
Quick. Yeah, it's quick. So you need to be prepared and need to be able to get all that detail in before that appointment if you can. So a lot of times we're calling ahead and trying to speak to the nurse that's assigned to that doctor.
And that's really great, because you're giving the doctor a heads up of what the issues are so that he can help to address those for the patient. Because a lot of times patients, especially older patients, they don't want to do certain things, but most of them really take what the doctor says, so seriously, and whatever the doctor says they're going to do because they respect their doctor, and they are going to do whatever he says, most likely. So if the doctor's on board already with goals or family goals for the resident or for the patient, then I think that it just makes a more cohesive team and the process a little bit easier, don't you think?
Definitely. And the other part of that, Marcia, is I think with our older population, they revere the doctor, which is great, but sometimes we aren't good self-advocates. So we may not fight for something and go, hey, I don't like this medication, it's not working. We tend to kind of hold these doctors up on a pedestal and say, well, whatever you say goes. I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to question anything. And I think that's where a care manager comes in, too, is that we could be the bad guy and go, hey, red flag, this isn't working, or, giving them feedback on maybe the home health company that they referred or medications. There's a lot of things we can provide that physician so they're aware of any concerns that are going on. So we're kind of the ones that come in. We're not heavy-handed because we want everybody to get along, but we are going to provide good advocacy and make sure that our patient and our client is well cared for.
Right, and you just said something that's going to be a segue into our next section about getting along. And when we come back from our commercial break, I want to talk to you about family dynamics and how does family dynamics enter into the picture when you're doing care management. So y'all think about that, and we'll be right back.
Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts.
Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
You've joined Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and we're in our second half of the show today. And at this point, I'd like to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts has many communities across the United States, close to 50, and they are dedicated 100% to dementia care. Matter of fact, memory care is all they do. And because they're a leader in memory care, they care not only about the resident that they take care of, but they also care about you, the family caregiver. And they have a lot of resources. One of the resources that they'd like to share with you today is this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. And this book is a wonderful resource for caregivers that gives you lots of information, definitions, examples, tips on caregiving. If you would like to have this book, you can call Arden Courts on their toll-free line, which is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Let them know that you heard about this free book offer on Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll take your information and make sure that one book gets mailed directly to you. Or if you know a caregiver who would benefit and maybe they haven't been able to catch one of our shows yet, reach out and have a book for them. They'll be very happy that you thought of them in this way, something that you can tangibly do to help them in their caregiving efforts. So, my guest today, via telephone from San Antonio, Texas, is Jill Piazzi. She is a care manager. Her company is called Gray Matters. You can see her picture on the screen. She's a lovely person. I met her last week in San Antonio when I was visiting Arden Courts there. And we're talking about what a care manager does, how a care manager can help families. And right before commercial break, Jill, we mentioned about care management and family dynamics, because especially if families maybe don't live in the same town as their loved one that has dementia, for example, and all of a sudden maybe the neighbors are complaining that this person is going out late at night, maybe they're not dressed the way they should be to go out at night, maybe they're going around knocking on people's doors, and all of a sudden the families are notified and they're in denial. Does that ever come up, Jill?
Oh, yes. I think what we see as care managers, it kind of runs the gamut. I've had clients that have had alcohol addiction, and, it's not something that just starts when we're 80. It could be a lifelong habit. And so it gets tough. You may have people drinking early in the day, and if I have dementia, I may not know it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I shouldn't be having a scotch on the rocks. And especially if I'm diabetic, so I've had a client like that and still working with that person. But luckily we are no longer drinking, and so it's been a good result. But we get the gamut, opioid addiction and issues with hoarding and all kinds of things. It's not always real simple. So we see things that are hard on the families, and some of them just kind of throw their hands up, and especially if the senior or the client, shuts them out. And I've had that happen with clients where I think I was giving you an example of a client that I placed in one of your communities, actually, and she changed the locks on the door to the son that was the one bringing her food and was the one in town that was helping her. Making sure that she had groceries and taking her to doctors and all that. So
she totally refused his help.
Exactly.
Is that because of her dementia, or do you think that she was in denial of her condition, or do you think it was something where maybe she had, ill feelings toward the son about something and a history of negativity with the son? What's your take on that?
I think it was the dementia, and also because the conversations were about her moving. So that kind of stirred the pot that this isn't safe. We tried to bring in providers, and it worked just very briefly. And she had someone that she really liked, and then just one day was like, don't come back. Just get out and don't come back. So then providers would come. She wouldn't open the door. So then the family started having the conversation about, it may be time to sell the house and move into an assisted living. And I think that's where the rubber met the road was, I'm not going to let you in, I'm going to change the locks. And so it was unfortunate because this son was the main person that was taking care of her, checking in every day, bringing her dinner because she didn't eat regularly. And so, and also very unsafe. She was driving almost up until the move and should not have been driving. So that's an issue that was reported to the physician. And so you hope the DMV will get involved and all that. But it's never cut and dry, and it's never really quick. It's not always a real quick thing. So, yeah, so it makes it hard on families when they're wanting the best for their loved one. But the loved one with dementia may feel like they're, intruding, and they're trying to take over, and they feel like you're parenting the parent, is what we call it in our industry. You're parenting your parent, which isn't always fair to say, but it sometimes feels like that.
So how do you approach a situation like this? She won't let the son in. She kicked out the caregivers that were there to keep her safe and to make sure she ate, and she won't let them in because it's her house, and she's refused. So how do you deal with somebody like that? What did you have to do, and how creative did you have to get?
We had a lot of conversations. It was mostly the daughter and I. The son worked a lot, and he and I would talk a little bit, but it was mostly the daughter. And so it really came down to that repeated conversation of calling Adult Protective Services. Usually we want that to be the last resort, but when someone's unsafe and they're not taking medications and they're a fall risk, or they're still driving and they're unsafe, which could be a danger to other people too on the road, that's when you have to involve your local Adult Protective Service. It's a state agency, so you have to involve the caseworkers. So you're telling the family what to do, or saying, I'm going to call. Because as a care manager, we're required to report any type of, concerns about abuse, exploitation, or self-neglect. And in this case, it was really about self-neglect. There was no neglect from the family. They were trying. It was really coming from the client.
Yeah, that's really hard situations like that, because a lot of family members just throw up their hands and say, what can I do? And then with the expertise of a geriatric care manager, you're there to guide them and say, well, this is what we have to do now. Sometimes, care managers can avoid calling Adult Protective Services, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Like you say, you have a fiduciary responsibility to report this, because a person who's not taking care of themselves and eating right and taking their medications, and they're a fall risk, that is a threat to themselves. So definitely somebody needs to get involved and step in, and obviously you did, and you did the right thing, and now she's in a community where she can be cared for and transition and hopefully have a better quality of life, because isn't that what it's all about?
What it's all about. And ironically, I learned in the community when I was with you, because I placed her and we got her placed and I was done with my work. I check in, but I was pretty much done. Everything was stable, but I was happy to learn that she actually had a provider helping her in her home. So it's ironic how things work out. And I think that happens with dementia. We may change in this process of the disease. So maybe the things that we didn't like initially, like someone coming into our home, may be a blessing later because we have a companion now and someone that can be with us and get us to an activity or read with us. So it is ironic that today she does have someone with her as a sitter. So, things do change sometimes, and sometimes for the better. One thing I wanted to bring up, Marcia, too, is a care manager can sometimes step in before Adult Protective Services, because a lot of people are very wary of calling because they're thinking, oh no, this caseworker is going to come in and rip my mom out and move them to this horrible place, and it's going to be disastrous, and nothing's going to work right, and my mom's going to hate me. So I think that's where a care manager can come in, is try to work on things and build rapport with that senior as quick as we can, and build the trust and say, okay, let's try to get some help if they're willing. If they're willing to allow help to come in, things really can improve. If they'll let someone cook and clean and drive them to doctors and be a companion, play games or watch TV with them and have conversation, you can see an improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the best.
It's a matter of really working on it and alleviating any kind of fears, just saying that we'll try to pick the right person, and you and I could pick them together. We're not just going to call a company and have them place whoever they want. We'll call several companies, and we'll do this together.
And I think that's, key right there, the together, because we always say it takes a team. It's or a village, that when you have a person that needs all this help, it's not just one person that could do everything. You need a team so that everybody has their part and the expertise to make this as successful as possible to help this person, to give them that quality of life, and whatever that team might be. And get your team together. And I think that's really important. And obviously you can help get that team together because getting involved with choosing caregivers, which a lot of people think that you have to take the first one that comes to the door, but you don't, because you do have choices, and you want to have somebody that has a personality, that they click, that they trust, and that is so important. And again, something that you help to make happen. And one of your many job duties, one of the different hats that you wear, so to speak, right?
Yes. Definitely. Yeah, we do a lot of different things.
Yeah, you do. So you do all of these different things, and one of the things that people like to know about is, okay, this is a service. What does it cost? Is it covered by insurance? Is it covered by Medicare? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, there's a range of costs, so you really have to call your local care manager because each market is different. So obviously, if you're in a market where cost of living is higher, the rate's going to probably be higher. But some people do sliding scale, and that's kind of nice if the client is going on Medicaid, which is our program, our federal program that helps those that are low income. And Medicaid covers those in the home and in nursing facilities. So some of us may be willing to do a price reduction, and maybe it's not the client paying us. Maybe it's the adult child because this helps them. And some people go, but this seems so expensive. But the reality is, if I'm the adult child and I have to take off work, fly into my parents' town, or get a hotel, that's going to be a whole lot more money and time and energy than it is for me to bring in someone that's the expert. So that's something I try to tell people, because sometimes they think, oh my gosh, but our rates, vary. And the other positive is that I also refer families to our local area agency on aging for our county or for outlying counties. So they may not do in-depth care management, but they do what's called care coordination. So they can help for a limited period, and that's great for those that don't have funds or, need some help and just need to kind of get started. So I guide people, and I know a lot of my colleagues do this, where they try to give a resource to that family so that they're not just left with nothing.
Right.
So there's a lot of options.
Right, but Medicare doesn't cover your services or a service of a care manager.
Long-term care insurance may. It depends on the policy. Some policies will call it care coordination. So depends on the long-term care insurance. So if somebody's thinking about bringing in a care manager to help and they know that their family member has a policy, I would definitely pull that policy out and call, because sometimes things in policies aren't always spelled out. In fact, I just did that today with the client. I called because what was written down from the salesperson back in 2005 wasn't exactly all that it was today. So it's always good to call that insurance company and verify everything. So if they have a policy, it may cover some of the care management, which is great.
Got to read everything in those long-term care policies, because sometimes they're vague and you never know, so very, very good idea there. We're going to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, Jill is going to share some more real-life stories and then talk about how you can find a geriatric care manager in your area. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias, and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know, we understand, we can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Somewhere at the corner of
An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'm talking with Jill Piazzi. She's a geriatric care manager out of San Antonio, Texas, and we're talking about all things care management. Jill, we have a little bit of time left before we have to end today. It goes by so fast. But I wanted to ask you, I know you have so many cases. You've been doing this for so many years. Can you recall maybe your most difficult case that turned out to be a success, or maybe the case that you're most proud of? Can you share a story?
I have several, but I think the one that stands out the most, these are prior clients, but I had a neighbor call me for some ladies that lived in a home, and the neighbor was taking care of their feral cat colony. So lots of cats. I end up going into the home. One of the ladies is in the hospital with a fractured hip. The other, who unfortunately had dementia, was in the home, electricity turned off, no food, dirty, and she did not, and was a chronic smoker. So I'm in this home, no electricity in the dead of summer. So I don't know if any of y'all have been in San Antonio, but like right now we're experiencing 100-degree weather, so it's pretty hot. So I'm in this home, and so what ended up happening was being in communication with several close friends, and I ended up moving the lady in her home to a hotel temporarily because the bills were not paid. Unfortunately, the person that was in the hospital was the one that took care of all the bills and was more cognizant. The person in the home was confused and not eating, so there was a lot of work to be done. It was working somewhat with family that were a little bit involved. They didn't live in San Antonio, but it was getting the one that had the fractured hip to a rehab and making sure that the friend could go visit, getting her eventually placed in a residential care home. She ended up going to a nursing facility closer to a family member, which worked out in the long run, but eventually, what was hard was there was no actual funds per se. It was more about the property was worth something. So it was getting a commercial real estate person involved to sell the property to get the monies to pay for care, having the neighbor help me with the feral cats, having a garage sale to sell all the items that were stacked up in this house. So everything ended well, and so I still kept in touch with them even after they moved. Unfortunately, one has passed away since, and I was with her even up till the time before she passed. But to me, that was probably my best success because it was pretty dire walking in. And that was a situation really where Adult Protective could have jumped in, and they have moved this lady somewhere she didn't want to go. And the issue, again, is the smoking. Most places don't allow you to smoke in their community. So it was me being creative. Actually, what was funny was I took her to a vape shop so that she could get a vape. And so a lot of it's about problem solving. It's like, okay, you can't smoke in this community, and they're not going to be able to get you outside all day long because you're a heavy smoker. So let's get you an electric cigarette or vape so that you can still, get your need met. So, yeah, there were some funny days that we had, but everything ended up well. So.
A lot of pieces to the puzzle there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a lot.
That and it sounded too like there might have been some hoarding going on there because you had
Yes, a
to
lot.
get rid
In fact, I remember I was trying to get the one cat that lived in the house with the neighbor who was on a cane. You have no lights because the electricity's turned off, and we're trying to get the cat out and get it fed. And I remember laying on the floor and trying to take a broom to get the cat out. I cannot see, and I'm laying. I think I had on like capri pants or something because it was so hot. But I remember not even knowing what I was laying on because it was so dirty. And so, yeah, as care managers, we sometimes just jump in and try to just do what we got to do.
You definitely have to get your hands dirty sometimes.
You do have to get your hands dirty on occasion, yeah.
Wow.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the cat, we didn't want him to stay in there and pass away. And so, yeah.
Well, if people are listening to us today and they're thinking, gee, maybe my situation warrants a care manager, and they're not in San Antonio where they could call you, but if they are, I want you to give your number. But if they're not in San Antonio area, then how would a person go about finding a care manager to help them?
Yes, definitely. Well, if you're in San Antonio or surrounding counties, outlying areas, do go there. So my number is 210-363-3554. That's my cell, and I answer it usually up until early evening. Like to get some sleep, so I don't usually answer late. But you can go to our national association, the Aging Life Care Association, and that website is aginglifecare.org, O-R-G. And you can search for care managers in your area, anywhere in the United States, I think even Canada, and you can search by state and by city and even by zip code. So you can find someone in your area. And the things to look for in it with the care manager is, first of all, finding out, are they certified? What kind of background do they have? And just kind of getting a feel for them. And you can even ask for references and things like that. And we're bound by some pretty strict ethics in our organization, so I think that alleviates a lot of concern for families. Many of us have liability insurance, so yeah, you can go online and find somebody in your area and interview them by phone. You might have several to choose from. If you're in a big market, you might have quite a number of care managers.
So it is important to interview them to see which one that you want to work with.
Yeah, you can do that. Just, do a quick phone call, or you can send an email. It's probably better on the phone. I think you get a better feel for someone. So, just asking about their background, or if you have a specific concern or issue, finding out, has that care manager had a client with that issue, or are they experienced in this, or are they willing to do the research? Because sometimes we come across new situations or new conditions that we've not dealt with before, but hopefully that willingness to jump in and research and find the right solutions.
So can you give that website again for the aging care?
Yes, it's www.aginglifecare.org.
aginglifecare.org to find a care manager near you. And so Jill Piazzi, who's in the San Antonio market, gave her telephone number. Her company is called Gray Matters, and she also has a website, which is graymatterscare.com. So you can go to her website and read all about Jill. And we got just 2 minutes left, Jill, so I want to thank you for being on the show, sharing all of your expertise and helping caregivers understand how a geriatric care manager can help them with their loved one. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Oh, thank you, Marcia, and thank you for all your years in the industry. It takes, like you said earlier, it takes a team to do what we do, and we all have to work together.
Yes, and we work with geriatric care managers all the time, and we know how valuable they are to helping certain situations that probably wouldn't happen without your services. So thank you for partnering with us, and thank all of you today for tuning in to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. We're every Tuesday, Eastern Standard Time at 5 p.m., 4 o'clock in Texas. Don't forget, you can call Arden Court's toll-free number, get your free copy of the 36-hour day book. And you'll want to just call them at 888-478-2410. Tell them that you'd like your copy of the 36-hour day book, and they'll be happy to mail one to you absolutely free. So I hope you join us next time, next week, same time, same place. Until then, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it, and so do you. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.